This is CGTN, China Global Television Network.
Zimbabwean president says national mourning will continue until the late former president Mugabe is buried. Some foreigners still stranded at South Africa's Katlehong police station, even as xenophobic attacks decrease. And Hong Kong police prevent protesters from entering the city's international airport to avoid disruption. Hello and welcome to CGTN. This is Africa Live and I'm Karen Roberts in Nairobi. Also coming up in the programme, the online marketplace where women in Tunisia are selling old clothes and buying new ones at discounted prices. And in sports, South Africa's first black rugby union international, Chester Williams, dies. We begin in Zimbabwe. The government has announced that the country will be in a state of mourning until the late former president Robert Mugabe is buried. Mugabe has also been declared a national hero. The former freedom fighter and founding father of Zimbabwe died in Singapore on Friday. A relative of the former long-serving leader said there are no arrangements in place yet on when the body will be transported back to the southern African nation. However, more details will be communicated later on.
Like when will the body be brought back to
No, we'll let you know, but it's all still being arranged. There's no arrangements made.
Okay, next week it is. Okay.
Next week? Okay. Thank you so much.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you. Sorry, I didn't want to keep you guys waiting unnecessarily. I saw a lot of you.
Yes.
I saw you in the afternoon at the actual hospital.
Yeah.
Yes, I saw you too.
To South Africa now, where xenophobic attacks were witnessed this week. One of the affected townships is Katlehong, where the local police station hosted foreign nationals who had nowhere to go. Police have arrested 50 people for their part in the attacks. Angelo Coppola has more.
Research by the Institute of Race Relations suggests that there's a deeper-rooted issue behind the xenophobia that swept parts of Gauteng in early September. Their research goes back to the 2008 xenophobic attacks.
One group has to do with unmet socioeconomic frustrations, poverty, unemployment, which makes people susceptible to populism, to messages that somebody else is doing them in. The second group is the issues related to the rule of law. The idea that we often live in a consequence-free society, and this is unfortunately something that seems to go from the top to the bottom.
And then there are other issues that directly affect people at community level.
These people, they got gun. They were shooting South Africans. Police will investigate. There will be no truth. There will be no evidence because foreigners, they got gun. Yesterday, that side, Nigerians were shooting Zulu people. What are you saying? They will just come out. Yes, everybody, white people, when they said white people, they were not foreign in this country. White people, they follow the procedure, they got documents. China, they follow the procedure. But those black ones, foreigners, they just take chances.
The academics say that large parts of South African society are under immense pressure.
This is the sort of thing that denotes a society in extreme crisis. And if we are serious about having any kind of future...
I'm Angelo Coppola for CGTN in Yeovil, South Africa.
Ethiopia is celebrating a week of peace from the 6th to the 11th of September, with each day dedicated to values that promote togetherness and justice. The government hopes that this will ease the ethnic tension that has caused many people to become internally displaced. CGTN's Coletta Wanjoe looks at the efforts Ethiopia is making to help the internally displaced return home.
Close to 1 million people were displaced by ethnic clashes in the southern region of Ethiopia this year. However, by July, over 290,000 are reported to have returned home. Other parts of the country have also been experiencing ethnic clashes. In the Somalia region of Ethiopia, for instance, from an estimated 1.2 million internally displaced persons, over 3/4 are conflict-induced and forced to depend on assistance. The country is relying heavily on aid from humanitarian agencies.
The number peaked, I think, of IDPs across the country, according to the UN, around 3 million. It's hard to say now because there has been secondary displacement, and the numbers have come down very, very significantly, particularly over the last few months, but obviously there's probably still hundreds of thousands of people living with host communities, living with extended family, and not back to where they were a year or 2 years ago.
The government has been working to ease tensions at the community level in conflict areas by deploying more security and engaging local defense groups. But thousands still don't feel safe.
Are trying to create conditions conducive to return, peace building, reconciliation, with local leadership, tribal leadership, to say, hey, we need to have justice, we need to have trust, we need to have a situation where people can feel safe coming home or starting new somewhere else.
In his July address to the National Parliament, Prime Minister Abiy Ahmed said internal displacement is one of the challenges for his administration. The Ministry of Peace has been trying to coordinate a sustainable solution to the issue. Experts advise government must control use of arms.
The state needs to act quickly and make sure that the safety of the Ethiopian people is the priority, and make sure that that is protected. So that's one. Security and the rule of law, enforcing the law, and make sure that there is no more displacement.
As it works to streamline security in conflict areas, the government of Abiy Ahmed is using initiatives like National Peace Days to try and help ease ethnic tensions. From 6th to 11th September, forums have been organized for communities to discuss how to iron out their ethnic differences. Coletta Njohi, CGTN, Addis Ababa, Ethiopia.
International aid agencies tackling the Ebola epidemic in the Democratic Republic of Congo say the recent visit of the UN Secretary-General will help strengthen efforts to end the outbreak in the country. UN Chief Antonio Guterres and other senior officials made a 3-day visit to the DRC to assess efforts to contain the outbreak that has killed more than 2,000 people since August last year. CGTN's Chris Ochemringa has more from Kinshasa.
Senior officials from international aid agencies have been visiting the DRC to assess the response to the Ebola outbreak since it was first declared last August. The most recent visit was made by the UN Secretary-General, Antonio Guterres. He expressed the UN's commitment to end the outbreak and called on donors to contribute more towards the Ebola response. Representatives of international aid agencies say such visits help scale up the Ebola interventions.
This visit was really very helpful for all of us, because one thing that it came with the high-level advocacy to bring Ebola at the higher level in the discussion, political discussion. Secondly, it was really supportive because we were finding the way how we can support Ebola-specific responses, creating an environment, enabling environment with interventions.
Just days after the UN chief's visit, the U.S. Agency for International Development announced a $21 million funding for humanitarian assistance. Congolese health officials and their counterparts from the World Health Organization also held a meeting in Kinshasa to train officials on how to prevent and control the spread of Ebola.
Whenever senior UN officials like the UN Secretary-General visit, there is a boost to the response. They have committed to work with the Congolese authorities to strengthen the response to end the outbreak.
The DRC is grappling with its worst Ebola outbreak in history. Records from the Ministry of Health show that more than 2,000 people have died of the disease since August last year. The recent visit of the UN chief and the World Health Organization's Director General was meant to reinforce the international community's response to the Ebola outbreak. Some officials believe it's still early days to assess the changes from the visit, but they say it will eventually help strengthen the coordination and mobilization of funds. Chris Ochemringa, CGTN, Kinshasa, Democratic Republic of Congo.
To conservation matters now, and 7 Amazonian nations have signed a pact to protect the world's largest tropical rainforest. This comes amid a backlash against Brazil over the forest fires affecting large parts of the Amazon jungle. Leaders from Brazil, Bolivia, Ecuador and Peru attended a conference held in Colombia's city of Leticia, where the agreement was signed. In the agreement, the nations, which also include Suriname and Guyana, will invest in disaster response coordination and satellite monitoring. Brazilian President Jair Bolsonaro participated in the one-day conference via video link, although the country's Foreign Minister Ernesto Araújo attended in person. The leaders present expressed their commitment to conserving the Amazon.
Yo quiero hacer un llamado a todos los aquí presentes.
I want to make an urgent call to everyone here that this summit leads us to concrete measures in what will be a pact. First, the coordinated action against deforestation. May all of us set our goals within our sovereignty to face this phenomenon. And that we also agree with the commitments that we have subscribed to internationally, and beyond that, to raise this determination at the presidential level to face this phenomenon.
Que elevemos esta determinación.
Ya no es un problema solamente.
This is not just a problem for the 34 million people who live in the Amazon. Of course, that's a huge number of people, but what happens in the Amazon affects not just our countries, but also the entire world. If we do not work in a responsible way, maybe in a short time it will be too late to reverse this situation.
A todos nuestros países y no afecta al mundo entero.
¿Cómo es posible, por diferencias ideológicas?
It is possible, due to ideological differences, to be distanced, but above the ideological differences are the rights of Mother Earth. With due respect, we have differences. It is all right, but the people will know who they vote for. That is not in debate, and so the document that is promoted as an agreement or treaty of Leticia. I ask all of us that we all face this problem that is presented to us as a team.
Protesters in Hong Kong are planning more demonstrations at the city's international airport. Authorities have been ramping up security, only allowing into the terminal ticketed passengers with upcoming flights. Police have already escorted away 4 people without valid boarding passes. Reports suggest some protesters may try to pass themselves off as travellers to get in, ditching their usual black T-shirts. Demonstrators say they plan to put up barricades and try to disrupt traffic. Hong Kong police are deploying nearly 3,000 officers to metro stations and bus stops. Hong Kong's chief executive is hitting back at the downgrading of the city's credit rating. Carrie Lam opposed the move, saying that the recent unrest hasn't undermined the one country, two systems principle or the rule of law. She did say persistent chaos has affected perceptions about Hong Kong and its business environment. The chief executive urged residents to work together to end the violence. Lam spoke at a meeting in southeastern China. Fitch Ratings, one of the world's largest credit rating agencies, downgraded Hong Kong's long-term rating from AA+ to AA with a negative outlook. It's the first time that has happened since 1995. We are going to a short break now. Don't go away. Lots more to come, including conservationists raise the alarm over missing great white sharks in the waters around Cape Town. And African scientific experts meeting in Uganda call for protection of the continent's diverse monkey species.
In 70 years, China has undergone unprecedented transformation. From its old industrial base in the northeast to its new manufacturing powerhouse in the southeast and to its emerging southwest. CGTN offers you a panoramic view of contemporary China. Our crews will travel along 3 different routes and come to you live from dozens of locations and 3 mobile studios. Join us for an all-inclusive look at China on our TV channel and digital platforms, September the 9th to the 20th. It is New China, then and now, in celebration of the 70th anniversary of the People's Republic of China, only on CGTN.
Africa Live. Find your voice.
To South Africa now, where concerns have been rising over the disappearance of the great white shark from False Bay around Cape Town. This is attributed to pollution. Conservationists are concerned that the beach is also at risk. CGTN's Travis Andrews reports on efforts to save the local marine life there.
It's a sight that can send shivers down just about anyone's spine. A great white shark prowling in its natural
future that we can aspire to. We need to start taking,
which along the country's coastline is most commonly False Bay. Now, though, not a single white shark has been seen in the area this year, not even a sighting from the eagle-eyed shark spotters, and the theory points to a sad demise for the fish. A genetic research study has identified that between 300 and 500 white sharks exist around the country's entire coastline, but its numbers in the bay have crashed.
This was already a critically low number for this population, and I'm talking about 2012, 2015, so years ago. It doesn't surprise me that now, some years later, people started seeing the disappearance of sharks in certain areas. I just think we had a steadily decline of the population that now becomes evident to everyone.
One main theory attributed to their disappearance is the common occurrence of orca whales in the area that are known to target not only great white sharks, but other species as well. Some experts though point in large part to human agency and the overall destructive way in which the coastline has been managed.
We have poaching, we have overfishing of the food resources, pollution. We have a lot of factors that human can change. And if we keep on having our head under the sand and pointing fingers on things we cannot change, these animals are gonna get extinct.
Last year, over 50 sightings were reported in False Bay, so none this year could also have an overall negative effect for the ecotourism industry. But the city remains confident that things could rebound.
There is new predators on the block. It's just that we need to emphasize that the habitat is changing, there's new species around, and I'm sure that apparently my understanding is that there's still a number of sightings in Mossel Bay. So I'm sure that the companies will also take that into account.
Love them or hate them, sharks are apex predators that are important to the health of the marine ecosystem. So while some water users might see the beach as a bit more safe now, the disappearance of these animals could have also adverse negative effects for the environment. The city says the absence of great white sharks in False Bay has never been recorded or reported on before, so this is unprecedented. There is hope, though, that if enough is done to restore the balance and health to the bay's marine ecology, then the species could